Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Have you ever looked across the room at your perfectly polite, totally peaceful partner and just felt this overwhelming, painful sense of emotional distance? It's a completely confusing contradiction, isn't it? On the outside, everything looks perfectly fine, but on the inside, you feel completely alone. Well, today, we're unpacking the psychology behind that exact feeling. We're going to look at the hidden signs that separate real, vibrant love from its polite but empty imitation.
Okay, let's dive into this. You might have noticed that sometimes your perfectly polite partner can start to feel less like a romantic companion and kind of more like a taxi dispatcher. You know what I mean? They ask what time you need to be picked up, what to grab at the grocery store, or when exactly you're going to be home. It sounds like care, right? But psychologists point to a concept called perceived responsiveness. This is literally the absolute core of intimacy, the feeling that you are understood, accepted, and cared for. A purely logistical question lacks all three of those components, and that is exactly why your brain honestly flags it as indifference, even when their tone is flawlessly polite.
This brings us to a really fascinating core contrast from our source material. Let's look at the crucial difference between a participant and a dispatcher. A participant wants you. They want your emotions, they want your details. They'll ask warmly, "Hey, what did your boss say? Are you upset?" A dispatcher, on the other hand, just needs to know your logistical schedule. They ask flatly, "What time are you coming home today?" The first partner is actively looking for a connection to your inner world, while the second, well, they're merely managing a timeline of your movements across the city. Let's move on to our first major psychological test, the jealousy paradox. Evolutionary psychologist David Buss looked into this in his book Dangerous Passion, where he studied couples across 37 different countries. Now, we're often told that a completely unjealous, hyper-calm partner is the absolute ideal, like the ultimate sign of maturity. But the data? The data tells a slightly more complicated and honestly sometimes uncomfortable story about human attachment. So the crucial point is that moderate jealousy actually signals attachment. It means something incredibly valuable is being protected, and it naturally kicks in when there's a real threat. Genuine trust sounds like, "I care, but I trust you." However, a total and complete absence of jealousy, especially when there are actual, real reasons for it, often masks complete indifference, not trust. It's a sign that the emotional waters are completely still simply because there is no longer anything left to guard. Suddenly, their calmness doesn't feel like such a compliment, does it?
Now let's look at a truly famous experiment. Welcome to Test 2, the bird test. Back in 1990, relationship researcher John Gottman set up what he famously called the Love Lab. He observed 130 newlywed couples in a totally everyday apartment setting. He wasn't looking at their big blowout fights or grand romantic gestures. Instead, he was tracking the hidden mechanics of everyday life, specifically how they responded to minor, everyday bids for connection. We're talking about things as mundane yet absolutely crucial as one partner looking out the window and saying, "Oh wow, look at that beautiful bird outside," or "Hey, listen to this weird dream I just had."
And this brilliantly illustrates the terrifyingly clear data they found. Couples who stayed together after 6 years responded to these tiny bids for connection 86% of the time. But the couples who ended up divorcing, they only responded 33% of the time. Think about that. This simple, everyday reaction to absolute trifles predicted divorce far more accurately than how often they argued, their financial situation, or even their overall personality compatibility. It's mind-blowing. The secret here is that look at that bird is never actually about the bird. It's always a subconscious plea asking, "Are you here with me?" And there are really only 3 ways to answer that. You can turn towards your partner, you can turn away, like, staring back down at your phone, or you can snap back with something aggressive like, "Can't you see I'm busy?" Take a second right now and ask yourself, which of these 3 answers do you hear most often in your own daily life? Let's move to our next diagnostic tool, Test 3, the good news paradox. This is based on some incredible studies by Shelley Gable and Harry Reese from 2004 and 2006. And this one is incredibly counterintuitive. They found that a partner's reaction to your good news actually predicts the longevity and satisfaction of your relationship much better than their support during hard times. I mean, almost anyone will offer a shoulder to cry on during a tragedy, but how they handle your joy, that is the real test. While there are 4 ways to react, which even includes ignoring you entirely or actively pointing out the negatives, let's just look at the 2 most common. Only step 1, the active and constructive reaction, actually builds closeness. If you come home and say you got a promotion, a participant partner throws a celebration. They launch this joyful interrogation. "How did it happen? Who told you? What changes now?" They look you right in the eyes. A dispatcher, on the other hand, gives you step 2, a passive, detached, "Good job. Does this mean a bump in the budget?"
thrown without even looking up from their task. One celebrates you, the other just updates the family spreadsheet. Which leads us perfectly into a very modern type of indifference. Researchers in Texas coined the fantastic term phubbing. As defined here, it's the act of talking to someone who is actively looking at a screen. You've definitely seen it. It's that all too familiar modern phenomenon where the smartphone basically serves as a permanent, unwelcome third wheel in your relationship. And the scale of this issue is just massive. Get this. 46% of surveyed individuals admit their partner is actively distracted by a phone in their presence. For about 22 to 23% of people, this directly leads to actual conflicts. And the real tragedy of it all? Only 32% of those who are regularly on the receiving end of phubbing report feeling satisfied with their relationship. What's absolutely vital to grasp here is that the phone itself isn't the actual enemy. The real damage comes from that devastating drop in perceived responsiveness we talked about earlier. It's the loss of feeling seen. When your partner scrolls while you speak, that little screen is essentially handing you a ticket that reports your place in line. And unfortunately, that place is not first. It creates this deep, lingering feeling of being totally excluded from their attention. Over time, this lack of responsiveness seriously compounds. Happy couples turn towards each other about 20 times more often than couples in crisis. 20 times. But here's the really bitter truth. Eventually, the unrequited bids for connection just stop. A person simply gets tired of knocking on a closed door. The real tragedy is that couples often mistakenly view this newly settled silence as the actual problem, when in reality, the silence is just a symptom. It's a symptom of a connection that faded away a long, long time ago. This brings us to a striking sociological statistic that has been remarkably consistent all the way back since the 1940s. Women initiate 69% of divorces. Why the huge imbalance? Well, the data suggests that women intuitively register this lack of emotional life, this creeping silence in the marriage, long before men even notice that anything is wrong. They feel the painful shift from participant to dispatcher, and they feel it deeply. So, how do you know for sure where your relationship stands right now? This brings us to the climax of our explainer, the ultimate diagnostic test. Back in the early 90s, John Gottman's team discovered they could predict which couples would divorce within 3 years, with an astonishing 94% accuracy. 94%. And they did this just by listening to how a couple answered one single prompt. This is the question. Tell me, how did we meet? What did you think back then? I challenge you to ask your partner this exact question tonight, completely out of the blue. It takes just a few minutes, but their answer will clearly reveal whether you are living with a fully present person or simply sharing space with a schedule manager. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast in how people answer that prompt. A participant will create a cinematic memory, they use we language, they recall warm details. They'll remember the ugly jacket you were wearing or how you both got caught in that stupid rainstorm. A dispatcher, however, issues a dry, factual certificate. They'll give you dates and locations, usually ending with a dismissive, "We just met, what's there to tell?" This test works so well because intimacy is built and sustained entirely through inquiry. Look at Arthur Aaron's famous experiment with the 36 questions. He proved that just 45 minutes of mutual, gradually escalating questions into each other's internal worlds dramatically deepened intimacy, even between complete strangers. Incredibly, one pair in his lab even ended up getting married. The science is undeniably clear. Intimacy is built by asking questions about someone's inner world, and it is actively destroyed by the absence of those questions. We'll leave you with this final empowering thought. If your partner goes weeks with asking a single question about you, you aren't going crazy. Your brain is correctly reading the room. There is a lively interest in logistics, but a complete dead calm when it comes to you. It's time to stop excusing a partner's emotional emptiness as just a calm character. You deserve genuine curiosity. You deserve questions about you. Let the GPS navigator clarify the schedule. Ask yourself tonight, are you truly living with a participant in your life or just a dispatcher? Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer, and we'll see you next time.